Okay, so we're back here. It's still December 13th. It's almost noon, and on in 2018, and we're here up at the farm, and we're just wrapping up here, and we have a story that we'd like to tell. That's been a family story from Mom's side for decades and decades and decades. And so, Mom, would you go ahead and start talking about your grandmother, Smith, who wanted to get to the temple?
Yes, back in 1938, when my grandmother, Susanna Songer Smith, she was a member of the church, of course, but her husband he was a member but not active. And so anyway, she always had this desire to go to the temple. And back in 1938, there were not very many temples that dotted the land like they do today. And so anyway, the closest one was Utah, Salt Lake City, Utah, the famous temple. And so anyway, she was determined to go to the temple. And so anyway, she got on a train.
Now she got to recommend.
And
that part I don't understand, is because when I was a bishop, we didn't give recommends to the wife.
If they were not both active.
If they weren't both active. And
somehow she got a recommend.
Well, we have always, after I became of age and started understanding all this genealogy and connections and stuff, I figured out that Matthew Calley is the one that had to give Grandma Smith a recommend to get to the temple.
Because back in the day, there was no stake.
And there was no stake.
Just the mission president who had the authority, the keys to offer recommends.
That's correct. And so anyway, I'm sure that he is the one that had to sign her that she could go. Well, anyway, because...
So she must have been fairly adamant about going.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely.
And had to convince him.
Yes, right.
But she's going to do it anyway.
Do it anyway. Well, so anyway, she gets this recommend, and like I said, it was 1938. That's a long time ago. And rules and regulations kind of change over the years as far as, who gets a recommend and who gets baptized, all that kind of stuff.
That's 2 years before you were born.
Yes, that's correct.
You were just 2 years old.
Yes, right.
You're 4 years old?
Four.
No, it was 38. You're just 2.
Yeah, just 2.
Yes. Well, so anyway, she gets her recommend, and I do know that Matthew Calley was the person who was over the southern states at that time. So anyway, she gets on this train, goes all the way to Salt Lake City, and
all by herself,
all by
her lonesome,
and gets to Salt Lake, and then gets that done. And Grandpa Smith again wasn't able to be with her because he apparently did not pay his tithing or wasn't
worth
She was endowed and sealed to her parents
at that time.
And they had to have proxies.
I see. Okay.
And so anyway, she got that done, and then of course came home, and we were so excited about that. In fact, we have since done the work for Grandpa. Also, my brothers did that for him long time ago, of course. And anyway, she did get to the temple, but there is a twist to this story, as my son Chad says.
But how many times have you told the story when we were the temple president and matron?
Okay.
At state conferences.
That is true. I have used this example of my grandmother going to the temple all by herself, plus way back in 1938, and by herself, and plus...
and she only went the one time.
And she went the one
Never
time.
went again.
Never went again. And this is kind of the way it was in the church in those days, and even during when my mother and father finally came to the temple, is that you only went to the temple one time. You didn't keep going. You just never did keep going. In those days, they didn't have the money. There wasn't that many temples. Well, so anyway, we were called to be the temple president and the matron of the Dallas temple. And so I used this story over and over again when I was asked to speak at conference or at ward conferences or, at the stake.
To help
or
encourage folks to, hey,
Yes, get to the temple.
get into the temple. You just
Go
got to get there.
and go, you've got to
often.
be there.
Yeah.
And then you should go often because, this is the way they're stressing it today is, you need to go more often than we do. Well, it's interesting that when when I would tell this story, I would tell about, hey, my grandmother went all the way to Utah all by herself, was sealed to her parents and then she had 13 children still at home. Well, as the twist in the story goes, that is not correct. She did not go to the temple by herself. She did not go on a train, but she went in a little probably a 38 coupe, little Ford coupe.
How did we find that out?
Well, about 2 years ago, we went to Utah and looked up 3 of our aunts that lived in Utah, and we got to talking to the one, and I said, hey, can you tell me anything about my Grandma Smith going to the temple on the train and
by herself?
By herself.
That was Sister Moss.
That was
in Bountiful.
That was her sister, Sue Moss.
Okay.
That she said, oh, hold on, wait a minute. She says, that is not correct. I said, what do you mean? I said, I have a picture of it on a postcard that says it has a train on the front of it, and plus it has Salt Lake City, and it's from my grandmother.
Postmark and things.
Postmark, from Salt Lake City and from my grandmother, and here's this train on the front. She says, no, that is not correct. She says, I was in that car myself with Grandma Smith and with my own sister that was driving the car.
And how many in the car?
And she said there were about 9 of us in that car. She says we were just piled on each other like crazy. But she says it was in a little Ford car, coupe, and it did take us to Salt Lake City. And so
to prove that, Chad, I did the research and found that everybody in that car were endowed and sealed the same day,
oh
including Grandma. And that's how we know that her Aunt Moss, Sister Moss, was telling the truth, and the train thing is not right.
But anyway, Grandma and Grandpa had a worker that worked for them on their farm there where they lived in Virginia. And we went and even talked to him one time, or the family did. And he said, oh, yeah, that's Susie. She got on that train and went all by herself and went all the way to Utah and went to that temple out there. And she, oh, well, yeah, she said, he said, I've seen the postcard. And I said, well, it's not right. It didn't happen that way.
Just happened to be a postcard with a train on it.
And you have a copy of that?
I have it in my one of these books.
Okay.
So anyway.
But it never says in there when she wrote the letter that she went on a train.
Yeah.
So
or by herself, or
I have, as I said, I have spoken about this many times about going to the temple only one time, and plus going by herself, and a long time ago, and coming to Salt Lake. And I said I need to apologize for that because it is not correct. It is not. That is not right.
It is correct that she went just the one time.
No. But
that she was sealed to her parents, but not to her husband or anything like that at the
not
time.
At that time,
we did that one after the fact, after we did his work.
Okay, well, that's awesome. That's a great story, Mom. It's awesome.
Oh, it's just crazy. But in fact, I think that this Sue she may already be gone.
Has passed away
because she was
very
really
heavy.
big and heavy, and
she was stuck in the basement. She couldn't get out. She had
a
lift,
a ramp fixed, but she had a young nurse there that was with her all the time.
She was very, very, very heavy, and I didn't think she'd live very longer after we made the visit.
And that was a couple years ago.
Yes, yes, just a
Okay.
couple of years ago. Yeah, when we went.
Okay.
In fact, we. Okay.